Good morning to everyone who is watching this. My name is Lourdes and Carmen, Rosas Arteaga, and today I will be giving a presentation about Howard Gardner and the multiple intelligences theory. First of all, I would like to give a brief introduction about who is Howard Gardner. He is a research professor of cognition and education at the Harvard Graduate School of Education. He is also an adjunct professor of psychology at Harvard University and senior director of Harvard Project Zero. For 28 years, he was the co-director of Project Zero, which I just mentioned. But as his doctoral career was ending, he encountered the neurological research of Norman Geschwind and was fascinated by his discussion of what happens to gifted individuals who suffered from a stroke or some other form of brain damage. This motivated him to work for 20 years on a neuropsychological unit, trying to understand the organization of human abilities in the brain. The Shattered Mind, a book he published in 1975, chronicled his research on individuals who suffered from different forms of brain damage, as well as how different parts of the brain are dominant for different cognitive functions. In 1979, he was assigned to write a book about the discoveries of human condition in the biological and behavioral scenes. This started the research program that led to the theory of multiple intelligences, also known as MI theory or MIT. In this book, he published about 7 different types of intelligence that he thinks about, and he deemed that linguistic intelligence, logical, mathematical, musical, spatial, bodily kinesthetic, interpersonal, and intrapersonal intelligence. So, the motivation for this theory was that a specific faculty can be destroyed or isolated as a result of brain damage. His studies on neuropsychology about the consequences of a brain injury located in a specific area of the brain proved that mismatched abilities and differences in profiles can be a direct consequence of them. And in Gardner's own words, he accentuates cases like prodigies who are proficient in one or more aspects of human competence, contrasted to savants, intellectually disabled or autistic children who develop one human capacity at the detriment of mediocre performance of the rest of their abilities, or even a harsh lack of domain in them. His theory presents different intelligence capacities that result in many different ways of knowing, understanding, and learning about the world, as well as an alternative definition of intelligence based on a radically different view of the mind. At the early stages of the MI creation, Gardner's definition of intelligence was the natural ability to solve problems or create products that are valued within one or more cultural settings. This definition challenged the traditional psychological view of intelligence as a single capacity that drives logical and mathematical abilities. In that same postulate, he also described intelligence as a biopsychological potential that could be influenced by experience, culture, and motivational factors. And now, what is the multiple intelligences theory about? Here I would like to give a brief explanation about what each intelligence is about, as well as several thoughts that Howard Gardner has described in his books. But before diving into them, I'd like to stress that his research was based on, as I already explained, people who have suffered from brain damage or injuries, as well as neurodiverse people, and that he emphasizes that nobody should be labeled as only one of these intelligences, since he says that us as humans have all of these intelligences in all of us, just that some are more developed than others, and that stereotyping is not the way to go here. So remember, we are all smart in all of these ways. We're just more proficient in different intelligences. And first, I'd like to start with the linguistic intelligence, which is the capacity of using words effectively, whether orally or in writing. This intelligence includes the ability to manipulate the syntax, semantic, or pragmatic use of language. They are typically good at reading, writing, telling stories, and memorizing words and dates. They tend to learn best by reading, taking notes, and listening to lectures, and by a discussion and debate. They are also frequently skilled at explaining, teaching, and persuasive speaking. It is said that they learn foreign languages very easily, and as they have a high verbal memory, can recall, and ability to understand and manipulate syntax and structure easier than other types. Then we have the logical mathematical intelligence, and it is the capacity of using numbers effectively. This intelligence includes logic, abstractions, inductive and deductive reasoning, and numbers. While it is often assumed that those with this intelligence naturally excel in mathematics, chess, or other logical or numeral activities, there's a more active definition that places emphasis less on the traditional mathematical abilities and more on reasoning capabilities, abstract pattern recognition, science thinking, and investigation, as well as the ability to perform complex calculations. Then we have the spatial intelligence, and it is the ability to perceive the visual spatial world accurately. This intelligence involves sensitivity to color, lines, shapes, space, and the relationship that exists between these elements. They often have a strong visual memory and are artistically inclined. Those with visual spatial intelligence also generally have a very good sense of direction and may also have a good hand-eye coordination. Next up, we have the bodily kinesthetic intelligence. Kinesthetic. It is about the expertise in using one's whole body to express ideas and feelings, as well as using their hands to produce or transform things. In this category, people are generally adept at physical activities such as sports or dancing, and often prefer activities that use movement. They often learn best by physically doing something, rather than reading or hearing about it. Those with strong bodily kinesthetic intelligence seem to use muscle memory rather than verbal or visual memory. And then we have the musical intelligence. It is the capacity to perceive, transform, and express musical forms. This area has to do with rhythm, music, and hearing. And people with this intelligence display greater sensitivity to sounds, tones, rhythm, and music, as I've already said. They normally have a good pitch and are able to sing, play musical instruments, and compose music. Those who are strongest in this intelligence may learn best via reading. In addition, they will often use songs or rhythms to learn and memorize information, and may work best with music playing in the background. Next up, we have the interpersonal intelligence, and this is the ability to perceive and make distinctions in the moods, intentions, motivations, and feelings of other people. Persons who are in this category are characterized by their sensitivity to others' moods, feelings, temperaments, and motivations, as well as their ability to cooperate in group work. They communicate effectively and empathize easily with others. And typically, they may learn best working with other people and often enjoy engaging in discussion and debates. Finally, we have the seventh intelligence that Gardner proposed back in 1987, and it is the interpersonal intelligence. This intelligence is all about self-knowledge and the ability to act adaptively on the basis of that knowledge. This intelligence includes having an accurate picture of oneself, awareness of the inner mood, intentions, motivation, temperament, and desires that one has. They often have an affinity for thought-based pursuits, such as philosophy, and they learn best when allowed to concentrate on the subject by themselves. And here I'd like to make a parenthesis to state that in the years 1994 to 1995, Howard Gardner took a sabbatical year and concluded that there was enough evidence for innate intelligence, which is the naturalist intelligence. And he also suggested that there could be evidence for ninth intelligence, which he states that is the existential intelligence, but since none of the research was fruitful and he was taking a sabbatical year, he stated in different interviews that for him there are 8 3/4 of intelligence. And now to speak about the final intelligence that he proposed later, and was published in one of his books in 2001. It is the naturalist intelligence, and it recognizes and classifies numerous species of an individual's environment. Since this is one of the newest intelligences, it is not as accepted as the original 7. Those who have a proficient in this intelligence are said to have greater sensitivity to nature and their place in it. They have also the ability to nurture and grow things, and greater ease in caring for, taming, and interacting with animals. They are also good at recognizing and classifying different species. The theory behind this intelligence is often criticized, as it is seen by many not as an indicative of intelligence, but rather just an interest. It has also been said that each of these types of intelligence may have a bearing not only in the student's ability to learn a foreign language, but also on a teacher's tendency to favor a given teaching method. Individuals differ from one another in their ability to understand complex ideas, to adapt effectively to their environment, to learn from experience, to engage in various forms of reasoning, and to overcome obstacles by taking thought. And although these individual differences that I just mentioned can be substantial, they are never entirely consistent. This is why the concepts of intelligence are mostly attempts to clarify and organize this complex set of phenomena. Nowadays, a growing amount of researchers believe that there is a variety of intelligences that are dependent on each other, and each of them has their own advantages and limitations. But most people think, since it's already hard enough to teach to one intelligence, which was the tradition now, what should we do about 7? What to do when there are well-defined limits and heavy limitations in cognition and learning processes? And nevertheless, psychology may be related to teaching, but it does not dictate it or control it. It only helps understanding the conditions in which learning should happen. So someone else's limitation might be someone else's advantages. And therefore, 7 types of intelligence could provide 7 ways of teaching, not just one, and any considerable limitation could be modified to allow children more possibilities of learning and understanding. And related to that last thing that I mentioned, I'd like to dive into why is the multiple intelligences theory important in education? So, as we all know, teachers are well aware of the fact that every classroom is full of students who are different from each other in many different ways. Each student comes from a different social, economic, cultural background, and different areas of interest. They have ways of expressing themselves, and they also have their own strengths and weaknesses. All of these factors can affect the student's learning process, but how should the teacher face such diversity in the classroom? This is where Gardner's MI theory comes in, because it could be useful as an initial step to investigate the diversity in every classroom and to find out more about students' strengths and weaknesses related to the learning process. So, the traditional classroom tends to treat students as a homogeneous group, with the teacher presenting the same exercises to all students at the same time and expecting to obtain the same answers from everyone. But students are also expected to just absorb the knowledge that the teacher presents. And as we all know, most academic knowledge is evaluated by rote tests, where the best grades are assigned to students who demonstrate the greatest ability for memorization. Here, Gardner argues that students learn in ways that are identifiably distinctive, and that the broad spectrum of students would be better served if disciplines could be presented in a number of different ways, and if learning could be assessed through a variety of means. And now, specifically in the area of second language learning, it is assumed that some people are gifted and that they learn foreign languages with ease. But it has been observed that learners acquire a language with different results despite the fact that they are in the same age, in the same group, and equally motivated. This is why Gardner's MI theory allows teachers to plan lessons and whole units that can effectively address all of the intelligences in the classroom. For example, the silent way emphasizes the development of students' inner thinking, which relates to the intrapersonal intelligence. Total physical response, however, emphasizes language learning through physical action, which relates to the bodily kinesthetic intelligence. Suggestiopedia, for example, uses drama and visual aids as keys to unlock a student's learning potential, and this relates to the musical intelligence. And then, both the communicative approach and cooperative learning seem to place its greatest emphasis upon the importance of interpersonal relationships to learn a language, which obviously relates to the interpersonal intelligence. And similarly, whole language learning has at its core the cultivation of linguistic intelligence, just as the other teaching approaches. But I just said this because we think that these investigators, Martin P. and Najafi Sarandes, also think that specific abilities can involve students in each of their intelligences as well. MI theory can provide a way for all teachers to reflect upon their best teaching methods and to figure out the reason why some methods they use work well for some students but not for the others. It may also help teachers expand their current teaching repertoire to include a broader range of techniques, materials, and methods for reaching an even wider and more various range of learners. Since it may be that some students just haven't responded well in the past because their preferred intelligence was not being stimulated by the teaching approaches used. And as a conclusion, I'd like to say that learner-centered instruction from the perspective of multiple intelligences demonstrate that students' strengths and weaknesses can be affected by a teacher's pedagogical style. Studies carried out by Curie K in 2003 and Haley M in 2004 proved that students who received MI-based instruction demonstrated a high degree of satisfaction and a positive attitude towards foreign or second language study. They also were more enthusiastic about learning, and the behavioral problems in the classroom were minimized. On the other hand, teachers felt that their classroom management skills were enhanced, since most students expressed positive feelings about teachers using a variety of instructional strategies, as well as assessment practices that address the multiple intelligences. This can be attributed to the greater degree of flexibility, variety, and choice that the MI theory strategies allowed students in their classrooms. And finally, once again, I'd like to say that MI theory has the potential to make a positive impact on both teachers and students. These are the references that I use to obtain all of my information, and I have nothing else to say than to thank everyone who watched this video.